Okay, I'll start. Okay, so first, some contextualization as to this motion, right? So we believe that this motion mostly pertains to countries with ruling parties and state leaders that have an anti-democratic track record, that often verbally and policy-wise have stated attacks on protesters and the right to assembly, have continually tried to restrict the freedom of the press, have attacked the division of state powers, and the legislature and jury, and have been trying to roll back minority protections. So this to countries such as Poland, Hungary, and even like the US and Trump. In relation to these pro-democratic activists, we must also note that in these countries, there is often a state-funded propaganda machine that already aims to discredit these pro-democratic activists, often portraying them as anti-nation, anti-patriotic, as being shells for Western powers, portraying them as highly radical, etc. Right. So how do we believe that these fake news and synthetic media would actually be used, right? So like we believe that this looks like pro-democratic activists, online manufacturing private scandals pertaining to the personal dealings of higher up politicians and leaders, manufacturing charges of corruptions, creating like deep fakes of them saying something highly inflammatory, societally unacceptable, and that will lead to like societal divisions. Now, why do we actually believe this as to be something that actually advances the causes and the support of these that these pro-democratic activists could enjoy? Firstly, we believe that most of these leaders are highly banking on their strongman image. We find it to be like for them like highly, really important that the way that they are portrayed and seen by most of the country, by their supporters, that their image of even also manufactured often by state propaganda that portrays them as strong, noble protectors of their people, gives them like an aura of legitimacy, and psychologically place like people needs to be protected and taken care of. And we believe that through these means they often garnish a lot of support, and we believe that like state-based propaganda and the perception that they enjoy within their nation is highly important for them to actually, have an era of legitimacy, right? So we believe through like manufacturing different fake news that we actually, start to like slightly chip at their image. That if we attack the status that they have, the status that they enjoy, and if we in a way try to show them as a mockery, that we are quite chipping away at their image. I'll take the point from OO.
Why do you think that the deepfakes from the democratic activists would be more efficient, or even somehow efficient against the state machine, which has way more experience and way more resources in the deepfake field?
Like the thing about like fake news and deep fakes is the fact that like pretty much anyone with any technical knowledge can produce them. They are easily disseminated through through social platforms and the internet. And if they are inflammatory in nature, we believe that there will be something that is highly viewed, something that is clickable, easily often shared, and we believe it would be seen by a lot of people, and it would also be easily manufactured. so we believe for it to be firstly numerous, and secondly viewed by a lot of people. Right. Thank you for the point. Second point of our constructive is that we believe that by actually by actually, highlighting and creating the ones who, actually highlight these specific either like party leaders or high-ranking politicians, and bring them under some type of public scrutiny, or like at least like by making them a point of like public discussions that we might possibly actually lead to like further investigations whether or not any of these allegations are true. We believe that just which even if they're not, which like obviously by the motion they are not, we still believe that just having this buzz and them being a focal point of discussion and possible investigation and many prying eyes, we believe that there are quite a lot of things that can possibly be uncovered by this. Why do we believe that some type of investigation, whether it be legal or whether it just be based on journalists or like bloggers, whistleblowers, or whatnot? Why do we believe that this is something that is likely to occur? First, we believe that there will be a high amount of public demand for it, whether it be from critics trying to clean up the image, or whether it be from supporters trying to clean up the image, or whether it be for critics wanting to tear these leaders down. Secondly, we believe that since it will be something that is scandalous and something that is viewed by a large amount of public, we believe there will be a good amount of journalist interest, and we believe that once this becomes a talking point, that it would actually make it far easier for whistleblowers to come forward with ex-partners that maybe have witnessed either collusion or proper bribery, etc. Will find it far more that would be far more likely for them to actually step out and say their truth. So like for all of these reasons, we propose this motion.
We thank the speakers very much. It seems that the network I switched into is still not a very good one. So again, sorry, but I will switch back again to another network.
Can you hear me? Dear speaker, we disagree with their interpretation that when we talk only about authoritarian states who has and versus is debating in this round, we think that this is unfair and unlegitimate. Why? Because when we is undebatable, because when we talk about our power, we need to understand this is a reason to legitimate from this.
I'm sorry
do deepfakes in the using the state.
Leader of the opposition. I'm sorry, but you need. Could you cut down? I think that no one is able to hear you at
really?
this point. Yeah, I think that the internet is maybe very weak, right? It's not just me.
Okay, can I start my speech from beginning?
No, obviously you will begin your speech from the beginning, but I wonder if it's about, I don't know if it's about your internet or it's about your headphones or something, your microphone. Are you using a microphone?
Okay, it's okay with my microphone, but I have some troubles with internet connection, right?
Again, I don't know which one is it. Are you standing right next to are you right next to your partner?
No.
You're not that. Is it the network? I see. Okay, let's start. I think everyone has shut down
can you hear me now? It's okay?
our cameras and see if that makes the connection any better. So just
okay. I don't know. Do we have some time to try for me to reboot my internet connection? I will not risk. Madia, please send me a message. Can you hear me? It's normal.
Yes, I can hear you. Azat.
Okay, there's no lag. Okay. We disagree. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3. We disagree with OG interpretation of this motion because we think that when you talk about authoritarian states with strong ghost propaganda fundament and instruments, we think that it's undebatable in this case. Why? Because it's
Azad?
Yes.
Very sorry. I just disconnected for a second, so I didn't hear the start of your speech.
Okay.
Sorry. The quality is still not as good, but we'll just have to, I think, go through with that. So I will close down my video, and hopefully that would be good enough. And I'm very sorry for the delays. Let's begin. So I'm very happy to call on the leader of the opposition.
Okay. So I can start, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Dear Speaker, we disagree with interpretation of this motion given by OG. Why? Because we think that it's undebatable for government in first place when they talk about authoritarian states which have a strong gospel state propaganda instruments. Why? Because firstly, when we talk about authoritarian state where government need to make opposition shut, it will be a nice reason, nice opportunity to legitimate firstly deepfakes that they do on ghost propaganda, on state propaganda. They can say, well, even if we do deepfakes, fake news on our big channel, your opposition do the same, so it's okay. It's okay, part of politician fight, and they will continue to do it. And in the population eyes, it will be okay. And we can say that we can say now to populations that they're lying to you, they making fakes because we do the same. Also, they have more resources to do it, more money, more opportunities. So their deepfakes will be more powerful because they will make more instruments, television, Facebook, or something like that by their money and resources to share it on the maximum number of people once. And also, it can be more. It can be more. Better, it can be more better with cool actors, with cool speeches, because they have more money to afford this. Also, they can train these deepfakes more intensively, also because they have money to cool computers also. Also, they can use it like as a reason to arrest activism, to make them be ashamed and their television or something like that. So also it will damage opposition movement in this country. Also, we need to realize that people who have critical thinking, who don't like deepfakes, will see that opposition in these countries will using deepfakes, and they will it will make opposition have a conflict inside itself, and so many people will not support the opposition because they not different as the government. We think that it's not what about we need to talk. We think that we need to talk more likely about democracy countries with big with parties with two forces. one force which says that we need to make more authoritarian laws because time to do it, because there are some context of situation, and another side which says that we didn't need authoritarian things, democracy is above all, and etc. Why it's useless for democratic activism in these countries? We think that firstly because it will not be effective, because people why authoritarian parties, what the authoritarian parties do? They have some trouble, some populistic trouble in most cases, like Brexit or something like that, and they say, you have a trouble, we have instrument to solve this problem, which don't like you, but we need to take some of your rights to change it. And people who under populistic speeches, they are going to use deepfakes to have legitimate reason for their position, which they already have. I mean, if we use deepfakes to say people that their position is wrong, they disagree, they agree with our deepfake less likely, because people just need to prove to be strong on this position. There is scientific research about this. Also, we need to understand that Google, Twitter, and also other services work on mechanisms that make deepfake useless, because they say it's deepfake, don't watch it, and also it's ineffective. Why this is bad? Principal moment. We think that the mission of democracy is to choose elites which rule the country. To make these elites chosen by people, chosen autonomously from the people. We think that when we use deepfakes, we make people aren't able to do autonomic choice. And when we go vote for some people, when we use deepfakes, he was lied, and we think that it's not fair, because it's affects the mission of democracy. When you can choose your elites, your leader, by autonomic choice, we think that it's bad. Also, we need to understand. That why is this bad on practical level? Because it will lead to legitimate to use this dirty manipulation in the future from both sides. And also, we need to realize that in this world, also people with critical thinking who can detect deepfakes, they will not listen to opposition, not listen to democratic activism. So we will lose some part of our electorate. It's also bad. So if more people, if big number of people like Watergate will know that they were lied, it can lead to big scandal. It can lead to all these people will say all politicians, democracy, non-democracy, they're lying to us. We need to have other politicians, other activists, other elites, and it will lead to the power can transfer to people who don't lie to them. We will lose our power, or we will lose our power to people who lie to them, but they don't, but it's still not detected. In both cases, we think this is bad. So we think that OG interpretation is unfair, and we think that this is useless, because it will not work as good as they work on this side, because there's another reason why it works on this side. And we think this is bad on principle and practical levels. Thank you very much.
Okay. We thank the speaker very much, and very happy to call on the Deputy Prime Minister here. you can open your cameras.
Okay. Okay, so in my speech as the second speaker of side OG, I will clear out some misconception that all had about our case, and I'll further our points about strong man-made image and how this type of like means lead to like better outcomes for pro-democratic leaders, pro-democratic activists, and how we should actually support this motion. Okay, so let's start by having a bit of a rebuttal, right? So right off the bat, we hear from side OO that this shouldn't be done because the other side can do it as well. We can see that this is not really like thing we should be debating about. Why? Because these people who are anti-democratic and need to be like corrected by pro-democratic activists necessarily like lie to people and necessarily like do these types of things, right? This is something that is widespread right now, and we don't see why them being able to lie to us, if they already lie to us, should like somehow prevent us from like trying to employ all the means that we can to ensure pro-democratic outcomes, right? So basically, if they are anti-democratic, if they are doing this shady kind of bullshit, we don't see why them doing more shady kind of bullshit should like somehow prevent us from like trying to fight it. Okay, so on the other point, the OO had to offer about the price and like this being not that available. That is something that is like really not true, right? Because we live in like 21st century, and most news are consumed through like social media, and people don't really tune in to get like news broadcasts on the TV anymore, and nobody really even reads the newspaper, right? Or at least great majority of people don't. They are primarily informed through like news articles on social media, and not even like reading the whole article, right? Just the headlines are sometimes enough. And for the average voter, for the average consumer, that is like the primary way they consume media, through clickbaity articles and through like bombastic headlines. And why do we think this is something that like really works in to our favor? First of all, like we can see that we are since like the news primarily works this way, we have like less problems getting in, right, with our stories, and we have like less problem distributing our news. Why is this important? Because by, as my partner already told you, by getting these kinds of information to like large groups of people, we can see that this brings doubt, right? And this makes people like sometimes question their leaders when they otherwise wouldn't, right? So basically, by having these types of like news in this day and age, we can see that there shouldn't be like really important who has more money and who doesn't, because this kind of software and this kinds of technology is readily available and really good at personal level use, right? So why is this important, and how this directly engages with like the OO case, and why is this has been established in my previous speech? The reason they failed to mention in their analysis on why these people have power is that people believe them, and people buy into their bullshit just because they believe they are strong leaders, right? People wouldn't like these strong leaders wouldn't be able to like make people give up their rights and vote for them if people didn't believe in them as being strong, as being like indestructible, as being like the most like chill and powerful guy in the world, right? By having these kind of news shaking up their image, we will see that more and more people will start to doubt these people, and this is good. Why? Because these people are doing some shady business, right? They are not democratic. And when you stop and think about the person you're going to vote for, who is going to like solve all your problems, being like flawed and having his personal scandals and not being able to like get his own life in order, you start doubting this idea you had in your mind of him being like indestructible and him being the right democratic and charismatic leader whoever you told him to be. And this is very important. Even if this news is not fake, and even if this news is fake, and maybe disproven in like future, you have this mind shift where you start thinking about them being able to do wrong, and you start thinking about their policies being able to do wrong and being possibly wrong. When you have this mind shift, you start thinking critically, right? And that is thing we should be doing, and think that is principally what democracy is, right? Thinking critically and thinking for yourself. And by having this shift, and by having like ability to think critically, you are in principle doing democracy, right? By following like a sheep, you're not in principle, don't have a right to vote, you're not acting on your own, and your rights are not being ensured. And why is this very important? Because these kind of videos will shed light on like their shady practices, and most of the people do these shady things anyway, right? And they are usually infringing on some rights that we think of essential. So basically, they are shady people, and they deserve to be scrutinized. And as my partner already told you, even though like initial news might be fake, this leads to like more people who have real news, who were there, who were witnessing these kinds of behaviors coming out, right? Because the first person who comes out is like the one who is most it's scary to come out first, right, with these types of story. And if this is something that is like all over the media, if this is something that it's okay, it's under public eye, and people are talking about this, people feel encouraged because they feel they are no longer alone, and because they feel that someone will fucking listen to their stories, right? And by having these news, even though initially fake, encouraging people to come up with real stories, we can see that we can make real progress. But even if this doesn't happen, even if no one else comes out with these stories, even if we do this slight mind shift in like minds of decent amount of people or some amount of people, we believe that this is something we should principally do, right? Because doubting these ideas that are pro-democratic is something that we should fight for, right? Because we believe that people deserve their rights, because we believe that people deserve their rights regardless of their sex, their age, their gender, and their sexual orientation, and the people deserve their like basic human rights, and these are the ideas we should uphold. We believe that this means in principle is something that we should do, because this leads to doubting autocratic leader, because this leads to breaking up of a strongman lineage, and possibly to doing actual reforms and enabling people to come out. We should believe that we believe that you should 100% vote OG. Thank you.
We thank the speaker very much. I will remind all the speakers to be mindful of the chat while you're on doing your speech, as people might be trying to offer your POI using the chat. And without any further ado, we're happy to call on the deputy leader for the opposition here.
Thank you very much. Just 1 second. Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. After 2016 and the linked fake news scandal of the US presidential elections, social media and public are way more educated and way more aware about deepfakes and the fake news, leading to Congress interrogation of top CEOs of social media companies, as we've seen recently. So the battleground that is present and that has been present has changed. Today, when we were talking about authoritarian countries, and even more, even if we're talking about democratic countries, and that I think is the better field of discussion, which I'll explain later, we see that today people are more aware, media are more aware. We see that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are introducing their own instruments, so they take deepfakes. An example of those I will show later. And even Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook itself released 100,000 of deepfake examples, meaning that they're highly aware of this. And even Donald Trump recently has been accused of presenting the deepfake information. So this whole media attention and this whole point of this whole point of our government, which is talking that we are going to use social media as our main distribution instrument, does not work. So let me, in 4 points, show why our government is wrong. Firstly, they say that authoritarian regimes are today as the main point of view. We don't think that this is the case, because today, when authoritarians they, even if their limitation is in present, we see that today this does not work, because when they say authoritarian regimes lie to people already, and we have to lie as well in order to match their lies. We see that they don't see that the second order consequences, because today when we lie to them as well, this turns into a game of fake news. This into a battle of fake news producers. In which field the fake news produced from government has way more power, has way more propaganda, way more money to promote their fake news agenda, and promote their fake news into the people's news feed, and way more experience in this. Secondly, and that's why the prominent democratic activists are going to lose this battle, because they are going to face the battle of way more experienced opponent with way more resources. Second, they see that people don't get into TV and it's all social media. We see that it's a weak point, but this weak point still plays on our field, because today social media is still highly affected by the government. So let's see, for example, YouTube trend in countries like Russia and Kazakhstan. In these countries, the YouTube trends is highly affected by the government, and much of the time you will see for example, the videos of oppositionary politicians being removed from the YouTube trends, whereas videos of opposition of pro-government authors is being promoted. Like we've seen, the project of Spasibo Eva is the Russian project, which was hugely promoted by the Russian government in 2011 in the face of street protests. So government still can control YouTube, not control YouTube, but hugely affect YouTube. But government can buy ads and can buy this promotion placed in the search field, where you can see that this is going to be the uneven battle in these authoritarian regimes. Okay, I'll take a point from CG.
Okay, so what about if the fake news helps save lives of minorities, like in non-democratic countries such as China and North Korea? Do you still think it's illegitimate?
Excuse me, in Korea, in countries like Korea?
Yeah, in non-democratic countries where even like social media like Facebook and Twitter are not existent, are forbidden. Do you think that the use of fake news on a global stage is still illegitimate in this case?
Yeah, we think that even here, in countries like North Korea, the spread of fake news is not present, because they are not the APIs of fake news are not available to them. That's why we think this point is irrelevant here. We are talking about the points where pro-democratic activists can actually access those artificial intelligence which can make deepfakes. Let me continue, because today when they say we'll have a better distribution of social media as weak parties, as pro-democratic activists, we see that today not only will the government have bigger power, they will have bigger power to create better deepfakes, which will be harder to investigate under those conditions. Because we see today that those deepfakes can be trained by the artificial intelligence model, which is the game of resources of which better computers make better deepfakes. And finally, on their point of strongman image will be shaken. This will not, because as we've seen in Russia, in the example of the investigations of Alexei Navalny, these videos and those investigations, even though they were true, they didn't shake the ratings of the authoritarian regime leader Vladimir Putin, and that exists, and that has been proven from my teammate, that people do not change their political views having new facts. And we see the three things why we think that those usually facts is wrong, because we see today that this corrupts the mission of the activists. As our opponents today, as our opponents told us today, they want to people thinking critical as being more members of democratic society, and this today does not happen, because there are two people: uninformed people and people who think critical. For people who think critical, this will turn them away, because this will show the image of us as being useless, like not useless, as liars, or in face of these adequate people. And for the second, and they will turn away from us. And for the second, people who don't have critical image of them, by introducing the deepfakes, we will lie to them, and we will betray them, and we will not show the true democratic values by which we will not educate them. Secondly, we think this is technically inefficient, because today, as my partner told you, AI detects deepfakes very precisely. The face forensic algorithm detects from 97 or 99 precision. That's has high precision. Moreover, we see that Twitter, Facebook already do mark those deepfakes as we've seen in COVID-19 situation, where YouTube demoted the videos which are mentioned the COVID-19 and introduced possibly false information. So people see that this doesn't work. And 30 seconds, please, in advance. Next, we see that today the huge alternative that we have is securing society from liars. Is to work with social media on to work on this deepfakes detection. So tomorrow it will not be the game of liars where the people or some kind of populist will take our regime will take our country, but the people who actually have the truth, the people who can deliver the right information, the people who can work on the correct delivery of true facts will work. Otherwise, we will have a game, not only unequal game, but secondly, the game where the people who give the brightest and the worst lies will be on top, where people who give the false information will be moving the society away from democracy. And for those reasons, I'm proud to go against this motion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, my headphones just died. I hope that you can still hear me this way. Without any further ado, very happy to call on the member of government here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Could you say something again?
Am I audible? Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's fine.
Just give me a minute. Okay, I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, today the closing government is going to start by rebutting some of the going over OG's case, rebutting some of the points that opening opposition made, and going on to extend our case and to bring up an aspect that has been missing so far in this debate. So first of all, starting with opening opposition, you talked about how basically saying that it's okay to legitimize fake news because the authoritarian propaganda is present, that authoritarians do this, and so we can is undebatable that we can talk about that. You talked about how you need more money and resources to do it, to make more instruments for maximum effect, which we think that as opening opposition, if you're going to be denying this altogether, that should probably not be in your argument, but I'll come to that in a minute, that you can use, it's not effective, that it takes people's rights away to deal with the problem, that it's looking for legitimizing wrong positions, that this is the target of democracy is to rule in a country chosen, that you have leaders chosen by the people, where people can make autonomous, fair choices, and that this would be affecting the mission of democracy. But I just want to point out to the audience that we're talking specifically here about pro-democratic activists. This is not, we're not advocating the use of fake media by said government or by the Democrat
It's
Party.
11 hours.
By the Democrat, sorry, that was the clock, sorry. By the Democrat Party, but rather through pro-democratic activists. So people will not lose trust in a Democratic Party or in the government or in their leaders, but rather have activists on the side who are separate from the government advocating these democratic ideals. So people can still trust in the Democratic Party, people will trust in the government. The Democrats are not lying to the people, but rather have activists trying to promote democratic ideals. You also had OO go on to talk about how this scandal of using fake information through social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and that it wasn't fair to say that that the government can use social media as a medium because it's a game of fake news, that it's endless, and social media is a weak point essentially for the government, and it's not even present anywhere. And my partner asked you about what you thought of using fake news on a global scale to affect the global international sphere. And you said, we gave you the example of North Korea, and you said that in North Korea, the spread of fake news is irrelevant anyways, because there's no social media. That's where we'd like to draw to your attention that fake news is not strictly limited to social media, that there is in North Korea or in China, there's such a thing as state television, as posters and images that can be published by the government. There's propaganda that is produced in different ways, and that is not strictly limited to social media. Then going on to, so basically what our extension is that we believe that pro-democratic activists should be using fake news and synthetic media, like fake videos or audio recordings, television interviews and the like, as well as using social media platforms to reach larger audiences, because in the vicious political sphere, in the international sphere, activists have to be able to fight back against the forces that would be undermining democratic ideals and the democratic movement. They would seek to destroy democracy. That if an anti-democratic force uses these tools, then pro-democracy will be defeated if they don't use it in turn. And we want to bring to you a specific example of China, to explain to you the global impact of what this fake news can do, this pro-democratic fake news. So in the case of China, you have, we want to draw to your attention specifically to the Uyghur case, where China is torturing Uyghurs and putting them in concentration camps, killing them. There's basically a genocide going on, and it wasn't even brought to anyone's attention on a global scale until very recently. It's been going on for a very long time because China was able to cover it up with propaganda and fake news. So basically that if pro-democratic activists start to fight back against anti-Uyghur propaganda, they should be able to generate enough media in favor of this cause to match strength. That this is basically that if China produces propaganda saying that this is these are education camps, or we're re-educating the population, things like that, and they completely deny any form of murder or genocide, that pro-democratic activists can come back and expose them and create media to show exactly what's going on the ground. That also if there's the threat of soft power of China over the international sphere, where countries are afraid to speak out against what China is doing to the Uyghurs, against this violation of this drastic violation of human rights. The production of fake news will allow the truth to come out and will expose the details of what is going on, of the violations of human rights that are happening on the ground, and that it would be able to sort of divert, to remove the soft power and to allow people to speak out and to be able to address these violations. That also pro-democratic activists never have enough news coming from China, and they need to be able to create more news, to generate enough news to match the resources and to match the propaganda that China is producing. This house also believes that in order to produce enough news fast enough to be able to save human lives and to fight for human rights, to fight for democratic ideals and values, we have to be able to address the urgent needs of human rights cases, human rights violations on the ground, to create fast news, to put pressure on the world, to put pressure on the international sphere, to fight to save lives. There's too late for a POI, right? So essentially our extension is that in the case, as we provided of China, we provided a clear example. This is a case of human rights. It's a case of fighting for democratic ideals. It's a case of saving people who are oppressed, people whose voices, people who need help. We have to be able to advocate, to allow their voices to be heard through creating media and images and putting fake news out there, which reflects the truth and reflects what is happening, and to fight back against the vicious forces such as authoritarian regimes or oppressive regimes, or China specifically in this case, which seeks to cover up what's going on the ground. I rest my case. Thank you.
We thank the speaker very much, and we're happy to call on the member of the opposition here.
now. So respected jurists at government and opposition, we closing opposition will be introducing something that we believe was the most important thing in the debate, the debate itself, that was supposed to be talked about, that that is the main principle in this debate and wasn't addressed overall. We believe that the main thing over here is people's right to have accurate knowledge, right? That's the thing, and where are we drawing the line, or where are we, or whether it is legitimized enough, or whether it's justified to steal away people's right to accurate knowledge. But before moving on to its that, I'd like to refute the government generally and the speaker before me. So the government comes and tells you that, we understand that, the opening is, the closing is a bit different from opening, right? Opening is like way more strict about, strict about telling us that, we'll be manufacturing charges of corruption, etc. But then we believe that they tell us all of this, but they do not, they miss the part where there's a victim in those charges being pressed, right? They miss the part where there is someone behind those fake news who's going to be affected, and how it is justified to affect them. We miss that whole part of why it is fine to create that sort of fake news and give people or go against people's right of knowledge, and put new victims into this. Because even if there's going to be an investigation, there is, in the end of the day, there's going to be a victim, or there's going to be another side which you're prosecuting, right? What did that side do wrong for you to prosecute them? We believe that we are missing all of this from Saud government, or from the opening government. We also believe that they also told us, or the government also tells us that it's going to attract foreign investigation, but we believe that that it's a huge loss of resources, and these countries, because they are not democratic, or because most of them are not democratic at all, we believe that the country's resources in itself are going to be put into they have a higher funding, as this whole thing was talked about by the opening opposition, that they have better resources, and they for them to fight. For instance, let's take Saudi Arabia for an example. We know how they have what they call it, all this fake Twitter accounts, and Twitter is closing them on a daily basis, and them continue, and the government has a way more huge fake media than any opposition that can come up with. They also told us about how makes people question the leader, or no, they told us about encourage what do you call it, that people will vote for this leader, or will think twice about voting. But we want to tell you that these countries are not democratic, and vote doesn't even exist over there. Voting exists in democratic countries, right? So it doesn't make sense over here. Now, to the speaker who was right before me, the speaker before me tells you about camps in China, and tells you about how they are going through bad, the Uyghurs are going through bad experiences, and for us to help them, we need to come up with fake media. But we believe that there is enough real media, there is enough authentic media to show to people instead of creating fake media. We do not understand why it's specifically justified, and why it's mutually exclusive to come up with something like this to fight it. Now, moving on towards my positive, and they also have another point, but I'll my positive will refute it. Their point of how urgent response, and then again towards the idea of victim. My positive mainly talks about two major things. It's about how we are going to tackle this principally and morally, right? So in principle, there are two major things. Principally, we believe that people have a right to have accurate knowledge, right? We believe that people have a right not to be manipulated. We believe that people have the and we believe that it's really important, because that's how we build trust between communities. That's how communities are built together, and that's how and the second thing about it being principally accurate is because that's what democracy tells you about, right? Democracy is all about giving you the freedom, and then we believe that in that freedom you should also have the freedom of accessing accurate data, and for you to shift to a different style, we believe that you shouldn't be manipulated, and you should have accurate information. Now towards and it also goes against, so by this it also goes against the idea of democracy in its own self, where you're supposed to be more free, but on the other hand, what you're doing is you are manipulating people into believing something, into believing your ideas. It's we don't see the difference between manipulating in this way. Why is it specifically good compared to any other manipulating that they are against? The other thing is morally, we believe that when we manipulate people, when we tell people or when we manipulate people towards something, and then they find out the real truth, or they find out that this was just what do you call it? This was just fake news. We believe that we believe that two major things happen. Number one, we have either backlashes, or number two, we have what do you call it? We lose trust from people, right? So instead of these pro-democratic movements going up with their cause, what happens instead is that these they go against what happens instead is that they lose trust and confidence in their own people. Yes, I'll take OG.
Just a sec, sorry. Sorry. Okay, like as defined in my case, if there is a state propaganda machine, trust is already very low in like any opposition. And seeing as all of this would probably be done anonymously through shared posts, it would be really hard to pin on a certain opposition and hard to illegitimate someone in particular.
All right. So we believe that number one, if it's being done anonymously, the trust is even lower, right? People, as the opening told you, that people now differentiate between fake news and the real news, right? Or people tend to be more careful or are more aware when they go towards social media. But even if, considering that it's anonymous, and even if there's an analysis that people tend to believe it, we believe that what do you call it? Yeah, even if it's being posted anonymously, we believe that not every government, or let's say it's like the idea of one size doesn't fit all, right? So not every government the idea in itself won't work with every sort of people, because the others they tend to what do you call it, more trust their governments more than anything else, because their culture in itself. For these reasons, I beg the jury to oppose. Thank you.
We thank the speaker very much. I'm very happy to call on the government whip.
Get it.
Okay, we'll start in. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Dear panel, I welcome you from the CG website of the House. So I would like, my speech will be as follows. Like, I'll first start by rebuting like what the first speaker of CO has been speaking about. Like I will refute that basically through examples, and then I will be like set in order towards like what was happening throughout all this debate, and I will end up by showing how the case of the government is taken over the case of the opposition in this debate, and that we should legitimate the fake news sharing and support throughout the social media and the media in general. So like, first thing first, the first speaker of CO is speaking about a victim. What did that side do wrong that were releasing as pro-democrat activists? What did the other side do wrong that we're releasing this fake news about? And I want to just like relate it with an example that he mentioned about Saudi and stuff. And like, actually, like, if you all remember the case of Khashoggi, it all started with fake news. Then a lot of like real news were released after that. Like, because without those fake news, the Turkish authorities could not go through the Saudi embassy and do their research and reveal the truth about the case. So this is for the first point that I wanted to rebut from the CO side. The second one is that the CO is mentioning real media. That, for example, on the Uyghur case, there is enough real media. But actually, I will take the PO later. So like, the real media is enough. But actually, like, if we go through all the media shared about the Uyghurs, it all started like a few years ago by some drone pictures, by satellite pictures. And then a lot of fake news got released about like multinational companies using human rights, not respecting human rights and stuff. And this news, we don't have any, because like, of course, it's an authoritarian country. China doesn't cover, there is no Twitter, there is no Facebook, there is no right to film videos on the street without having police following you. And there is no way that you can go through Xinjiang district without like having police controlling you, especially if you are a journalist. And we all know that, both in Korea and North Korea and China. So like, don't tell me that there is real news, because when you are speaking about real news, you need proof. And those like things that like there is organ selling coming from China exactly from Uyghurs is not existent. There is no proof about this kind of news, but see the effect that they are having on media, on the global effect, that this news, because like you're saying, like it's starting from a small like Twitter account or Instagram account, that like the Chinese government is using hair of Uyghur women or using organs of Uyghur Muslims, selling them in Saudi Arabia or in US for organ harvesting. And then you are telling that like, well, it starts slowly, and then people, the big mass globally, not only in China or North Korea, the global mass, all of us, we put pressure on these multinationals to respect human rights more. So you see that like, and here I will be relating to the OG side of the house, that our case as closing government is having wider and much more impact than the case of the opening. And like, we totally agree with the case of the opening, that like people deserve their rights, that people deserve to be respected no matter how different they are. And that like the victim, and I'm coming back to the point that what did the other side do wrong? Well, they are not respecting others. They don't respect that others are different than them. This is what they do wrong. They all think that like, okay, we are authoritarianism. What we think is right is the reality. Meanwhile, not. We're in a liberal world. We believe that like not respecting that others are different than us is already a sin, and one of the biggest sins that can ever exist, because we believe that we're all different, that we are all unique as humans, and we believe that this is where we are having our rights, and this is where the mutual respect should happen. So I will take that POI from OO. Is that it? Or
thank you.
CO?
There are many cases of spreading fake news about international conflicts, about Palestine, let's say, where we see Israeli soldiers kicking, the parts of the body of Palestinian soldiers, and those fake news do exist. So why didn't they work, and why will the fake news about Uyghurs and other people will work?
Do you think that like fake news, I don't know, like the case of Palestinians, we don't think that it is much related with fake news, more it is related about two religious like sides fighting against each other and trying to prove each other. Because like the thing is that like there is a coverage from the Palestinian side. Palestinians are not like Uyghurs. They still have like some support from other Muslim countries. They still have some support from other sides, and they're not really against, like, it's a problem between two countries or two regions that are fighting with each other. But for example, when we're giving you the example of China and Uyghurs, we're speaking about like an authoritarian country oppressing a minority inside the country, not two sides. This is what's different about it. Because when you are two sides, both of them have their own media, and both of them can have this, what you have called like a war of fake news. But we are speaking about the wider effect as a closing government, when we are speaking about like a minority being oppressed by the majority and human rights being oppressed, not in case of a war or a conflict like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but we're speaking about like the oppression of an authoritarian popularist regime, like such as the Chinese or the Korean, on poor human rights that did nothing wrong, but wish for a free and like for a healthy and peaceful life. So what do you get from our side? Like, let's wrap up this debate and show how like the in a comparative small summary, how the government is having the upper hand over the opposition. So basically, like what the opposition was speaking about is that, well, what the opposition was speaking about is, well, these people, what the government was speaking about from our side is that they have the image and stuff like that. They have like, these people have an image, and if you are hurting the image of an authoritarian person, sorry, my voice. So if you are hurting the image of an authoritarian person, they will end up like being searched, being like, there will be more things being discovered through time. So on what the opposition rebuted this with, they were like, well, you know, it's not right, and the like these people, they did nothing wrong, and what they did right was, and that like still the government can use social media in the example of Russia by the opening, and that like the government has, if they are strong enough, they still can manipulate everything, and it will not make any difference to have fake news. Where when we're having like from the CO side that like, well, we have enough real media, but they didn't back up that with anything, and they were just like, well, there is a victim that will be allocated in any case. So like just to sum up, yeah, that was the summary of today's debate. I raised my case. Thank you so much.
We thank the speaker very much. And last but not least, we're happy to call on the opposition whip.
Hello, just can I have a request, please, before I start, that I have a sign at minute 3 or 4, because I would know that I have to take the POIs at this point, so I won't forget them from the timekeeper.
Yeah, do you want me to make like a visual sign or in the chat?
Any of them will be fine. Thank you so much.
I'll post in the chat at 4 minutes as
Okay,
well.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, so I'll be starting now, 3, 2, 1. So first of all, let's start with our last speaker who came here, and there's a misunderstanding in our point of victims. When we said victims, we didn't mean the side government of the side. Any fake news or deep fake news is based on two sides, the oppressing side and the victim. Now, if we are putting out any deep fake news, there is the oppressing side, we want to hurt them, and we agree on that, that's fine. But what's the fault of the victim that's been publicly announced that they have been oppressed or their rights have been taken when in the first place they're not? So this will have a negative effect on victims. That was our point, and it was misinterpreted by the other team, and they did not really tackle it in a proper way. So let's move on I'll just start by rebuilding our points, and then I'll move into refutation of the other stuff. So basically we have two basic points. The first one is the principle, where we are telling you that everyone has the right to have an accurate, proper, true knowledge, so they have a fair decision on what to choose and which side to choose. By putting out fake news, we're telling them that no, that does not matter, and we are pushing them and manipulating them into one side. So we're kind of shifting from democracy to dictatorship. And this is not what we're seeking for. If we are truly pro-democratic community or whatsoever, we have to have this fair, open place for everyone to have a fair discussion and be able to reach to all the true and accurate news, and do not fill everywhere with deep fake news. And morally, as we said, that we are urging people into something, but when they agree or vote to this kind of whatsoever pro-democratic team, that is they convince people through deep fake news, and then after that, when we come to reality, and in real life, and they see that whatsoever deep fake has been out, they're not following it, or it's not right, and they're misleading people into other stuff, we will break the trust, and people won't believe in those pro-democratic, and they also will shift back to dictatorship, and we do not want that. Now I'll move on to our refutations. So let's start with the Uruguay and China and whatsoever conflict. Now let's imagine that before the Uruguay conflict, there was a deep fake news that China is having an oppression against any minority in her country, in China's country. But China proved that there's no any kind of oppression in the country, and everybody believed China. Now let's say after that, China had started oppressing the Uruguays and starting having whatsoever torture and what's happening now. After that, they proved that they do not have any kind of oppression in their country. After that, the world won't be able to prove that China's wrong, because it's already proven, and we missed our chance to prove that China's wrong by giving them a fake deep fake news, and they were able to prove us wrong. So we're just making people lose rights by giving them a weak deep fake that could be proven wrong in one way or another through a court, through whatsoever. So it's not our best chance. Moving on, also the first speaker of CG told us that we need this to promote democracy, and the only pre-democratic activists are going to use this. Okay, so if you're going to say that, as long as you're going to make it part of the law, as long as it's going to be legitimate and everyone is able to use it, you can't control who's going to use it. The pro-democratic could use it, and any other opposition could use it. The government could use it, as long as it's part of the law. So you can't really control who's going to use it and who's not. So your whole case is not going to be built properly. Now let's move to side by having deep fake news, and that was the point of side government. Yeah, anyone has any point of view? POI, sorry. Yes, please go on.
You're talking about how it's not relevant because anybody can use fake news.
Yeah.
The motion is specifically about whether or not pro-democratic activists should use it or
Yeah,
not.
I
not
get your
what-
point. I get your point. But we're talking on the long run. I get your point. Thank you. We're talking about the long run. If you're telling me that you're going to do this for the favor of pro-democratic people, on the long run, it's not only be in the benefits of the pro-democratic, it's going to benefit every other party of the discussion. Now, let's go back to the battle of fake news. The opening government is telling us that that this is better for the opposition because it will give them more space. But then we are coming and telling you that when this happens, the country has or the government has a lot of funding that they could also raise the battle of fake news between the both sides, between the government and between the opposition. Now, if we have this fake news battle, the whole battle between those two sides will be shifted from real problems that minorities or people are facing, from famine, from poor, whatsoever problems that the people are facing, into deep fake battles where we are just trying to prove that we are right and they're wrong, or they're wrong and we are right. This is gonna just be a battle between, okay, no, I didn't do this and you did that. And it's gonna be just like, no, this won't be in the greatest interest of the people. CG, I'll take you.
Although there could be severe consequences to either side not using fake news or using fake news, are you saying that, I mean, think about the consequences, the lives that could be saved through using fake
Thank you. I get your point. So you're
Okay.
telling me, I'm telling you that whatsoever, as I refuted your Uruguay point, any fake news, if it's proven wrong, you're gonna cancel any other chance for real people and real cases after that to be proven right, because the no, thank you, I won't take it anymore. It's out of order. Okay, let's go back to our case. And also, you're telling me that for the opening government, they're telling us that most leaders depend on they depend on the image. Yes, the whole government bench is just depending on they want to make everyone's dignity and everyone's every political people is calmed, and they do not have any image, so everyone could be able, like, at the end of the day, we wouldn't have any political man or any political side that's pure or that's whatsoever good. Everyone is bad, and everyone who will be seeking a position will be labeled as a bad person because of the deep fake news. Thank you so much. So glad to oppose.
We thank all speakers for this debate. We will move on to a different room and we will come back for the oral adjudication. Okay, hello everyone, we're back. Thank you so much for the debate. I will give you the call, then I'll give you the rationale behind the call. The rationale represents both me and the panel as a whole, as we were able to reach a consensus decision. The call goes as follows. The first goes to opening opposition, the second goes to opening government, the third goes to closing opposition, and the fourth goes to closing government. So OO, then OG, then CO, and then CG. Let's explain the call. So OG comes up and says, look, in those places that we're talking about, those very authoritarian types of regimes, or semi-authoritarian regimes, those are places where the leaders have a very, very strong image, like a strongman image, an image of someone that people trust and like. And therefore, what we're able to do by using fake news is A, chip away at that kind of image and weaken it, and B, we might be able to stir up some real things along the way, like we maybe blame them in corruption, and then some people would come forward and actually confess about corruption. The main issue with those points that I think OO are immediately raising is that it isn't really explained why is that a plausible situation. I'm not saying it is impossible, I'm just saying that the plausibility of this becomes very much weakened when OO point out that we are talking about places where the other side, i.e. the government, has a lot of control of the media, be it being able to censor the opposition or being able to provide their own type of this type of deep fakes. Secondly, that people just don't believe deep fakes all that much because they're rather easy to spot and say, oh, that was a deep fake. And that in those cases, the efficiency of this kind of methods become very, very limited. Now, I do think that it is smart by OO to point out that by OG to point out that the contrary is also true. I.e., it is very, very unlikely that given this type of situation, that the leaders aren't doing all those things probably anyway, and the trust in the opposition is lower anyway. And therefore, frankly, we don't have a lot to lose also from using such tactics, right? And then we come to the question of like, well, we have very little to gain, we have very little to lose, what should we do? And this, I think, makes the discussion in top half a rather close one. But why do we eventually still put it to opening opposition? So I think that the main reason we're going to opening opposition is two things that I think that they have said and have not been answered, right? A, the idea that for those people who supposedly few, but to those people who do support the opposition today, it seems to them that the opposition are about the same as the government, because both of them are spreading lies and there's no real difference between them. And if there's no real difference between them, there is no reason to support the opposition. And again, we understand that those are probably very few people that support the opposition to begin with, but still they exist, and that seems to be worse on opposition side. On opposition in this debate side. Secondly, OO point out that on the principles level, when you're doing something like that, you're doing something that is essentially anti-democratic, because in democracy, you want to give people the information so they can make the choices about their elected officials. You don't allow them to do them when they don't have accurate information. So I think both those points that weren't engaged with in opening government are enough to give opening opposition the edge, although, as I said, that was close. There was, I think, one point of engagement from OG saying, we don't think this goes against democracy because we promote scrutiny, and scrutiny is a part of democracy, scrutinizing your elected officials. But I don't think that is enough, because that point is heavily contingent on the idea that this would actually work, right? If it doesn't work, if people don't believe that, if people don't in fact hold their hold their leaders to some sort of standard because of the fake news, because the fake news didn't work, then I don't really see how you achieve that. But it does seem that it's still bad on the principle level on OO's side. So this is why I think that reply did not work. But as I said, very close between the two teams. Moving on to closing government. So essentially what closing government has is an extra analysis about the point that OG started about maybe we put up some fake news and then it turns out that there were like real stuff there and real stuff come out. So CG takes this point and say, let's talk about a specific case where you have a very oppressive regime towards a specific minority, and that specific minority you don't have information about, so you have to start making up this fake news so you could have some information about them, and then maybe eventually we will be able to do something bigger with it. Now, I think there's a few problems with this analysis. One is that, as I said, it seems to be another example over what we get from OG. Perhaps a better example, but another example nonetheless, and it's very unclear what exactly is the new analysis there that we didn't get from OG. Secondly, I think that, and more crucially, the debate is talking about a pro-democracy activists only. It seems that the case that you're suggesting is not the case of pro-activists, of pro-democracy activists, but pro-human rights activists. These are not necessarily the same, and it, I think, brings some doubt in my mind as to whether those examples that you provide are actually the real, or actually an example that is applicable in this debate compared with the example as we get them from OG. And finally, as we'll get to in a second between CO, the point of the efficacy here, again, I don't think is built. So the idea that if we have fake news, the process would be, as you suggest, that people say, oh, right, I believe this fake news, and then from there I learn more about the subjects and actually come up with real things. It doesn't seem to be a very plausible, process, which brings me to what we get from CO exactly in reply to that. Because CO says in the whip, but they give you also the opportunity to say to answer that in a POI in the whip, and the whip actively says, well, what you're saying is just going to backfire, because if this powerful state that you're suggesting, like China, for example, is as powerful as you say, it would be very easy for them to prove that this is actually fake news. And once they prove that, even if we get good information, real information about the bad things that they are doing, it will be a lot harder to convince people of it, because now it seems that those people have lied before, and there is no reason to believe them now. And given the fact that the alternative is people finding out about the Uyghurs anyway with real information, with satellite data, as you mentioned, and so on, it seems a lot more plausible as a case that this would backfire than that this would actually work. And this is the reason that CO would be above CG. Comparing CO to top half, so the problem with CO is that aside from that rebuttal to CG, which is effective against CG, we don't really have a lot going on from CO. So we have 2 points in extension. One, that this is an illegitimate thing because all those deepfakes also portray a victim, and it is unfair to portray that victim without their consent or something like that. While it might be able to work against CG's example, I really don't see how that works, for example, against OG, right? Like when OG, for example, says, you know, we will fake some corrupt politician talk, and I'm not really sure who is the victim of this corrupt politician talk, the way that OG describes, so I don't think that's very effective. The second thing that we get from COs is that this is illegitimate because it goes against democracy and people lose trust and so on. All of those are things that we already got from opening opposition. We don't understand what's the new material really being brought on by by closing government, by closing opposition in that sense versus the debate. Finally, one could argue that CO's rebuttal towards CG might also be applicable towards OG. So one maybe could say, oh, but isn't it very likely to backfire anyway versus OG? But then again, I think that not in the instances that OG is discussing. So as OG bring out in the POI, those are places where the trust of the opposition is probably very, very low. So we don't have, in fact, a lot to lose. So maybe it works in the case of like an oppressive regime like China, where you're trying to convince, I don't know, people in the outside world or something like that. But it seems that in the cases that OG are referring to, where you're doing stuff that are within the authoritarian state, that does seem to be something that at least could work, like bring some doubts about the officials and so on. So I don't think that rebuttal to CG, even if you were to stretch it and says what it has to do with OG as well, I don't think that would be enough to win over OG. So that is the call. So again, this results in a final call of OO and then OG and then CO and then CG. Any questions about the call? Yeah, okay, good. So if there are no questions, we thank you again for the debate. Have good luck in the next round. And if you want personal feedback,